Okay, I think a few more people will be dribbling in soon. So this is cybersecurity, probably the hottest subject on earth right now for this sector. As I mentioned to someone last night, a month ago, this would be boring me to death. But now me, my little teeny company, like, oh, what if I get taken down in a flash? Not to mention the big banks and of those guys. But we've got today, of course, experts on the subject, TCS. They're going to take us through a little bit of a case study. We've got two guys online, and I'll pass the microphone over, and you guys can do the introduction properly.
Alrighty. Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, let's see if we can get our lovely folks online in the moment. While we do that, thank you very much for joining today. My name is Ákos Balla. I'm with TCS, and I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but we do have two lovely gentlemen online joining us who are indeed. We got Phil and Vikas. I can see you guys. Hi. Guys, if you would like to also give a round of introduction about yourselves quickly.
After you, Vikas.
Thanks. This is Vikas joining from London. TCS cybersecurity business across continental Europe. I look forward to our conversation today, specifically given the paradigm shift in cybersecurity over the last couple of years. So look forward to our conversation today. Over to you, Phil.
Thanks, Vikas, and good morning. Phil Warren here. I'm actually coming in from Paris this morning. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, for Ipsen Group. We're a mid-sized biopharma company operating globally and very much in partnership with TCS on our cybersecurity journey. More to come on that, though.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So today I'm only anchoring this session. The lovely gentleman will give a presentation, and in the end you will get a time to ask your questions. But before we dive in, actually, because I'm not a cybersecurity expert, I do have to say that again. I've been trying to grasp a little bit on the subject, and I was browsing the internet, and there was this one meme that I think really encapsulates cybersecurity. So there's like two pictures. In the top, there's a very old picture of a person talking on the phone, 60s, 70s, and it says, "Ooh, I better not say this because they're probably wiretapping me." And then there's the other picture that says, "Hey, wiretap, can you give me the recipe for pancakes?" I think that's really encapsulating, like, for the last 1,000 years, we've built, cities and towns, and your houses, they're secure. In Japan, they're earthquake-proof, yeah? So we're really good at how to secure the physical world. But what about, this metaverse, let's call it that, because that's hip to say these days. Our infrastructure is, living, and our business is running in this so-called metaverse. And how can we build security right there where even a 12-year-old can cause serious damage to your operations, right? So I'm really curious what you gentlemen have brought us today. So Vikas, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Ákos, and thanks for setting that context and background. A very interesting analogy that you gave from past and securing physical world to how do we secure the world that is driven by connected things, right, over the internet, uh, over the cloud, over the infrastructure. Uh, so today, what we're trying to cover is what we have seen in past few years, and what has led to the shift, the radical shift that has happened, and the way the board, the organizations are thinking about cybersecurity, and how are we really solving that problem, right, for our customers as well as a TCS. And then we will certainly hear from Phil the live case that we are probably working in partnership with Epson, and how the platform-based approach is also solving some of those issues in a faster and a reliable manner. With that, if we can please flip over to the next slide. So if we really look at it, the businesses have been transforming over the last couple of years. If we really look at it, specifically the time of 2020, right, the pre-COVID times, or just the beginning of the COVID, right, we saw an exponential growth in the remote workforce, right? Because we all started working remotely, right? Even the institutions like banking and financial services, who always supposed to be working within their ecosystem, within their premise, also gave a permission to operate outside of their premise, outside of their mighty wall as well, and that actually took a complete exponential growth and remote workforce, and probably, as everybody said, probably a digital transformation on the future of work that would have taken ages happened probably in a 3 months to 6 months time period. And thanks to certainly COVID for that, that's something that happened good because of the disruption that was brought in because of the after effects of COVID and during the COVID times. And if we really uh, look at the future of the work, that will continue to dominate, right? I mean, if you really look at uh, the statistics, 70% of the workforce by 2025 would certainly like to operate remotely, if not for the 100% of the time, probably 70 to 75% of the time. In fact, we at TCS have also put a formula of 75 by 25, right? So 75% of the workforce we would like to operate remotely by 2025, right? If so, that certainly, that's the one way, IT and the business have transformed everything. Is happening remotely. Even if we look at today, me and Phil joining from different location, but more or less with you virtually, right? So doing in a hybrid manner. The second aspect that we saw, right, and we all live in the world where everything is now driven by the likes of Alexa, right? So the connected devices, right? If we really look at it again by the statistics, about 40 billion devices will be connected by 2025, again giving a rise to how the business will transform, the life will be transformed as well. But then as things move, right, as the business thinks of transformation, there's always the regulators also there sitting to ensure that we comply with the data residency, data security, data sovereignty requirements. And hence what comes as really the data regulations and compliance that we have to take care of. Then, if we look at the next stuff, which is certainly transforming everything because of either the TCO, because of the faster time around time, because of the compute storage anytime, anywhere, on a click. There's certainly an increase in cloud adoption as well. Last but not the least, the business models are now evolving uh, through the ecosystem partners, right? So these are the business transformation that we saw over the last couple of years, and that certainly has led to a radical shift in the cybersecurity ecosystem. So if we could move to the next slide, Akush and team there.
Thank you.
Can we move to the next slide?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. And if we really look at the radical shift that has happened, right, there are five things that we saw happening around our customer organizations. One, the digital trust, right? So, how do we really ensure while we set up a remote work and remote workforce, how do we ensure that the trust is safeguarded, right? So, security of the digital core. Second, the threat readiness, because the business transformation that we saw on the previous slide, that will continue for next few years as well, ranging from the remote workforce to cloud adoption. What does it mean is we'll have to be certainly ready for better detection, protection, and response, because as your attack surface grows, certainly the possibility of you probably getting under a trap of ransomware, malware, or a cyber attack increases as well, and hence will have to be ready. So there has to be a threat readiness, uh, and the connected dots between the detection, protection, and response. The third, because all of that is happening, in order for us to be threat ready, we'll have to certainly bring in analytics and automation that can give us the 360-degree visibility in order for us to really automate any response or recovery that is required for a potential or a possible cyber threat. Then the security assurance and the compliance, I believe every board nowadays look for, while I spend $1 million on the security, do I have the assurance and a compliance both at the same time? Because and I'll probably differ and put a difference. The assurance is that I'll not be breached. The compliance is that according to the specific guidelines or a matrix I'm complied, which is more a tick in the box. So am I actually really, balancing between the risk and the compliance? And that's something again, is leading to a radical shift overall landscape. And last but not the list, the cyber ethics that we saw in specifically past 12 months, like SolarWinds, Kaseya, has really raised a concern on how the supplier ecosystem is secured as well. Because one take on probably your supplier, where you probably get a SaaS service or a PaaS service, certainly can lead to a brand trust, brand damage of your organizations as well. And hence the supplier ecosystem security has also been seen as a very significant factor in ensuring that while we continue to march to business transformation, we are also sure that we are secured from all the angles in a 360-degree manner. With that, I'll quickly move to the next slide, please. And that brings to, why. So we saw the how the businesses are transforming. We saw that what is really leading to a radical shift. And if I combine both of them together, if I think it from a board perspective, what does really board need, right? What are board concerns? Their concern is certainly there is a risk due to cyber attacks. There's also a brand risk and a customer trust as well, because once you're hacked, and if specifically if you're B2C or B2B organization, certainly your customer trust breaks down, right? And if once the trust is over, it really becomes difficult for you to regarner that trust and start operating again. Third aspect is, do I have all the insights that are required for me to make an informed decision on where do I put my money, right, for the cyber security? So lack of cyber risk insights is again another board level concern. The geopolitical and supply chain risk, certainly I believe in today's world, specifically where we're sitting and what's happening, specifically in the Europe, we are all aware, and that certainly raises a both geopolitical and supply chain risk as well, because of the situations that gets created because of two demography, two countries are specifically getting into a conflict. Last but not the least, am I able to manage and maintain the compliance at a board level for cybersecurity? Am I able to answer to my stakeholders, shareholders, customers, and the regulatory bodies? And then leading to the IT risk, right, which is due to hybrid workplace, due to technology debt that probably I have. I may not need a specific technology, but I'm still carrying that into my ecosystem, probably exploding my attack surface, right? And somebody can probably hack that old server, which is probably running on 20,000, right? And nobody has patched it, and probably somebody make a backdoor entry, and then I'm devastated, right, with respect to my data, with respect to my customer data, and so on and so forth. And then there are certainly, if we really estimate, right, the average cost for any data breach is about 4.24 million. Right, I'm sure that for many, specifically the small and medium enterprises, in order for you to get that bare minimum security, you would spend less than the 4.24 million. And hence, again, because of the increasing cost of the data breach, I believe board is really giving it a food for thought on ensuring that there are new investments being made in order to transform the overall cyber posture for the organization. And that when I say that, right, and how do we really pay with TCS the way to strengthen cyber resilience? Because certainly we all have to understand that it may not be possible for any organization to protect and detect almost everything, and hence we always have to also prepare for those rainy days, where if we are probably attacked, we have to ensure that we are still able to recover without probably paying any ransom. And hence it is important to look at what will really drive the strengthening of the cyber resilience. If we can quickly move to the next slide, Akosh, there. And these are the five, we call it as a 5 agenda program for our customer, right? We always tell them that one thing that will have to work is first improve the defense, right? So really get defense into depth. And by doing small things like better configuration hygiene, the vulnerability management, it's not just important to know the vulnerabilities that exist in the system, but it is more important for you to remediate that vulnerabilities. It's more important for you to enable the multi-factor authentication on critical business applications, servers, data, etc. Then comes the improved detection, right? Certainly, while SIEM is one part of it that helps improve the detection, then how do I bring again the analytics insight, augmented detection and automated response? Am I also able to do a response in an automated fashion for any true positive or any true incident into my ecosystem? Third, ever the attack. So it's very simple. How do I really make it difficult for attackers to intrude into my ecosystem? And then by that, I'll have to certainly implement new strategy, new concept, new architecture, like micro segmentation, like zero trust, so that will bring in defense in depth controls, making it difficult for attacker to even intrude and make a lateral movement in the organization. Fourth, response readiness. Am I ready? And how do I test it? Am I doing a lot of readiness drills? Am I doing the tabletop exercises? And hence, while certainly we work on improving the defense, improving the detection, at the same time, it is also important to really do a check on, am I ready for the response? And last but not the least, the recovery capabilities, right? I'm sure specifically if I keep the probably pharma, the BFSI customers off, when we did our own conversation with the customer, we found that they do not have the robust BCPDR plan in place, and hence it becomes then important to, one, have a robust BCPDR in place. Second, bring in a tool that can help you help you with the fast turnaround time on the click for the recovery, right? So how do you really integrate your backup with the recovery solution, so that if there is a need for you to recover, it happens fairly quickly, and hence ensure that the business operations, or there's no business loss, there's no damage of the brand trust, there's no damage of the reputation. So this is the 5 point agenda that we drive for our customers. And when we drive that, what really happens is that modernize the cybersecurity for customer ultimately through this 5 point agenda. If Akush, we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so we are already there. And so that gives the comprehensive visibility when we modernize the cybersecurity. So it brings the comprehensive visibility. Also, it also ensures that not only your IT assets, and I'm sure that Phil will probably touch upon that as well when he speak, it also integrates your OT ecosystem as well, because cyber attackers are not only looking at your IT, but they're also looking at, can I actually get into your manufacturing or your OT ecosystem and probably directly break it down there. Then secure supplier ecosystem, right? So what we have been doing, right? We have developed a model where it is important for us to also take the supplier risk into consideration before before onboarding a supplier, and do a regular check as well for it, so that as and when you see that there is a risk level have increased because of the supplier, you are able to do an assessment and do a course correction. The zero trust implementation and the cyber aware workforce, right? Because of the exponential increase again in the phishing campaigns in last 18 months, it becomes very important that there are awareness campaigns that are launched, right? And we do as a part of those 5 point agenda for our customer. And then finally, extended detection and response. So just not limit your detection and response to your endpoints, but really extend it across your network telemetry. And TCS achieves all that through the integrated cyber defense suite that brings in everything under one hood, and also brings in the analytics, the 360-degree visibility, and automation. So we can really partner with you in strengthening your cyber resilience through a cyber defense suite, which does not only help you get everything under the one hood, but also helps you maximize your TCO. When I say the maximize your investment on the TCO, right? Because certainly when it's a cyber defense suite, you get many of the things as a service delivered to you in an OpEx based model, with all your concern on the skill sets also being answered, because then we deliver the outcome rather than the skills, right? So that's the cyber defense suite for you. We believe together we can make the world more safer, and modernize the cybersecurity with the required speed, agility, and velocity that is required for the digital transformed organization. With that, I'll hand it over to Phil and let us hear from him. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Vikas, and thank you for that presentation. And just to tie it in, actually going back to the physical security analogy, actually, that was actually where I started my career. So I've been in the kind of industry for over 20 years now, and like many, I think, security professionals, recognise that the future was both with the physical, but also with the digital changes. And it was very important for me on a personal level to be able to pivot my career to face how business was going to operate. But yeah, again, that kind of physical security introduction, I think it is a really helpful one. And I think it helps people to understand, what we care about most. So if we just go to the next slide, please. And again, please. And again, please. Thank you very much. So just, I'm just making sure I can see the right slide. Thank you. So yeah, so just in terms of Ipsen, so as I introduced just very briefly at the start, so we're a mid-sized biopharma company. Just to give you some metrics, we have 5,500 employees. We have a commercial presence in 30 countries. We have drugs registered in over 100 countries. And we have last year's sales were 2.8 billion euros. And we're actually quite an old company, so we've been going for over 90 years now. And then importantly, coming back to Vikas's point about OT, we also do the manufacturing ourselves. So we have 4 manufacturing sites, and we also have 4 global R&D hubs. So in terms of the biopharma industry, we're completely end to end, so going all the way from the R&D all the way through to the sales. I was brought into Ipsen nearly 3 years ago now, and I'm the first Chief Information Security Officer for the group. And I think that probably gives you some indication of where we were. We were in an immature state, and I'm being quite open about that. I can be open about that now because we've got to a more mature state now. But very much, I was brought in to build the cyber capabilities. So I'll share with you now some of the what we've done on our journey, and hopefully that helps to put kind of Vikas's presentation into some context as well as a customer. Just quickly though, in terms of with the context of who Ipsen are and what we do, it's very important. One of the first things we have to do is to kind of answer the question as to why we should care about cybersecurity within our group. So just taking the big picture view, like every organization, we are dependent on data for us to be able to achieve our business outcomes. And Vikas has touched on the COVID point, and that's important in terms of obviously things like remote working. We also know that even if we're not a company that manufactures vaccines, the life sciences sector has become the most targeted sector since COVID. And that's because, number one, it's seen as vulnerable, and number two, it's also seen as quite lucrative because of the demands that COVID has put on the sector. So we know that we're a target, and that means that we have to be able to defend ourselves. We're also operating in an increasingly heavily regulated environment when it comes to data. So everyone understands about things like the data privacy regulations, which have started in the EU and are now kind of expanding out globally. It's not only those, but they have been very much a forerunner. And the key point here really is that the expectations on data security from our regulators, but also our patients that we serve, and also the partners that we work with, are only going to increase and are increasing. So it's not a matter of just being able to do what you want. We are working within a much more restricted regulatory environment when it comes to data. And then there's a final point, and it's worth saying as well as the cybersecurity, I also cover the Chief Security Officer responsibilities for the group. So I take all security as part of my portfolio. So I also do the physical security and the travel security and the personnel security. And this comes into the fact that we operate, and we have to operate in, at times, quite hostile operating environments. And whilst that's obviously very important from a physical security perspective, the crossover to cybersecurity is fairly obvious as well. So making sure that we have physical protections of the servers, for example, making sure that we are educating our employees about what they can and can't do with their laptops and how they operate. That's also very important. And then I've just listed there a number of the impacts if these things go wrong. So obviously the safety of our people is first and foremost, but also from a cyber perspective, the availability of our products. If we were to end up with an attack which meant that we couldn't make our drugs, it means we can't serve our patients. As well as some of the impacts from a regulatory perspective, which I've listed there. So next slide, please. So just how we approach things, and it's very important with that context I've just laid out there to approach things from a risk-based perspective. And we've been very important, and it's from a prioritization perspective, we can't do everything. And I think that's what CISOs, leaders in the IT world will all say, is that we can't cover all the bases. Assurance in this world is actually quite difficult. So it's very important that we prioritize our finite resources at the right things. And this risk that you can see here is our number one. If we were able to make it our number 1, 2, and 3, we would do, because there's quite a big gap in terms of potential impact between this and the other risks. So this risk is really around a realistic worst case for Ipsen. And this is effectively a cyber attack which were to knock out one of our manufacturing sites, meaning that we couldn't make our drugs, and potentially meaning that we would have to rebuild the infrastructure with a period of downtime to make that possible. And this feels like if we'd had this conversation 6 years ago, a lot of people would be saying, is that realistic? But we've seen it happen. So the NotPetya attack, which is famous in pharma world, which heavily impacted Merck, MSD, did exactly that. So costing them reportedly over $1 billion to remediate, and also meaning that they couldn't produce their drugs whilst they were doing that. And this wasn't just a one-off. Also within the industry last year, Pierre Fabre, who are a French cosmetics firm, were also targeted by ransomware, again, leading to outages on their service. So whilst this would be a worst case, it is a realistic worst case. Next page, please. So we then also talk about data loss. And this is something which, as I say, is likely to have a lower impact compared to a complete outage, but it's something which is more likely. So the frequency of data losses for companies, just open your newspaper on any given day of the week, and you'll be able to read about the latest company that's lost a bunch of information. In fact, you may have seen this week that Nestle has been subject to a data breach. And that's just, one of many. So this is something which is just going on every single day of the week. And again, coming back to the regulatory environment that we're working in, this is something which you can't just get away with and move on. if you lose this data, particularly if it's sensitive data, particularly if it's personal data, and obviously when you're working in life sciences, that is very possible. That is something that we have to safeguard against, and the way we do that is through data security, which I'll describe a little bit later. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is not necessarily relevant for this particular talk, but just for completeness. And this is covering the physical security elements. And again, this comes back to the fact that we are operating in high-risk environments. We have to do that. That's where often our market growth is. And just because we have a threat, it doesn't mean that we can't control it. So this is just us managing that risk in an appropriate way. Next page, please. So that's our three risks that we focus on, and that's at the strategic level. Now, obviously, they can be then broken down into more tactical risks, which sit underneath it. And you'll be happy to hear that we have a risk register where that's outlined. I'm not going to share that with you now. Number one, because it's confidential, and number two, it's not particularly interesting in terms of that level of detail. So I've just given you the kind of the highlights in terms of the how we approach it from a risk perspective. So coming back to our kind of journey, so I started nearly 3 years ago, and one of the first things we wanted to do was I knew the context, I knew the fact that we were starting from a low level of maturity. For me personally, that's kind of more interesting compared to coming into a mature organization where you frequently can't necessarily demonstrate value, or at times you also have to undo the work of others that have preceded you. So I was given the opportunity actually just to very much build from the ground up. And one of the first things we did was we wanted to work out how far we were going. So like many organizations, we took a kind of industry framework approach. We used the Nist Subsecurity framework, which is an American framework. And it's a kind of 1 to 4 scale, 4 being good, 1 being bad or not as good. And effectively what it does is it takes you through all the controls that you would be expected for you to have in order to reach a level of maturity. And as you're going, you can assess yourself against that. Again, I'm not going to give you the score as to where we were 3 years ago, again, because that's confidential. However, let's just say it was low, and I'll give you that assessment. So we were low, and we knew that we had a target. So again, this comes back to the board level. We engage very early with that executive, and I think that's something which is incredibly important. Number one, from a buy-in perspective, just so they understand what you're doing and they support what you're doing, and obviously from a resourcing perspective. And I think that frequently executives or boards, they have some kind of awareness of we need to do something. And actually, in my experience, they're willing to invest. They know that this is a thing, and they know that they have to do something. I think the challenge for them is knowing what to invest in and whether they have a confidence that they're getting value out of that investment. So, and that's where having a framework and being able to talk through and demonstrate that this is not just the world according to my opinion or my team's opinion. Again, we use external auditors as well to get that extra level of assurance. That helps with the conversation so that they have confidence in what you're doing. And actually, we've used this framework for a kind of annual reporting. We've got a spider diagram so you can see where we were and where we've got to. Again, we've just had another audit. So after the 2-year point, we had another audit, effectively just to check on the progress. And we were happy to report that our assessment and the external auditor's assessment was pretty much the same number. Actually, we'd self-assessed ourselves a little bit under what they had actually, so that was nice to see. Anyway, so what we did is we set ourselves that target, which from an executive perspective, they said you need to get to a 3 out of 4 by the end of 2024. So we set a time, we set a level of maturity, and that's an average score. So some controls would be stronger, others we wouldn't be. Again, that's also depending on what assets we're dealing with. So things like the manufacturing sites, we would have a high level of maturity. So, but some of our lower level risk assets, we can have a lower level of maturity, and that's just risk management. And what we did is we basically worked out our 5-year roadmap, and we worked out, and as it says there was 150 things to do, but we very much broke that down into sizable chunks. So we had 8 work streams, which you can see there, and those are still the work streams which stand today. So my team is effectively assigned either 1 work stream or 2 work streams, and it's their responsibilities to meet the control objectives for each of those work streams. Next page, please. So just quickly, and I'm not going to go through line by line, you'll be happy to hear. And this is also coming back to very much the work that we've been doing with TCS. So in my previous company, I was working in a UK government institution where the culture was very much to do the IT stuff yourself. So it's very much in-house. And I think that's been a major shift, both for me personally, but also in the industry, which was to say, does every organization need to have their own network engineers, workplace engineers, coders, etc., etc.? And the answer to that, I think, is from an industry perspective, is actually no. The managed service model means that you can effectively have your core of experts within your organization, but effectively outsourcing a lot of these controls, not just from a security perspective, but from an infrastructure perspective, from a broader IT perspective. It makes sense. It makes sense in terms of agility. It makes sense in terms of skills. But obviously that changes the way that you're managing your IT. We, on the security side, very much embrace this approach. So at the same time, we were going into contract with TCS for our broader IT operations, so all of our infrastructure management, network, workplace, emails, everything. As part of that, we also piggybacked on security needs, and this is where we've worked very closely with Vikas and his teams in terms of building our security operations center. And having a enterprise vulnerability management, and also doing things like managing PKI. So we had this kind of initial engagement, and that has meant we've been able to build out particularly on the infrastructure side, we've been able to build out our controls. Actually, and I'll come on to this point in terms of lessons learned, but we've been able to do this very, very quickly. So again, from a previous experiences, trying to build out a SOC can take many years, and it can take many years because it's very difficult, and it's the type of thing when you do things in-house, you almost have to start with a blank canvas and start from there. With the managed service model, of course, there is complexity in terms of the partnership and in terms of how you're sharing information and the architecture, etc. But having this kind of out-the-box approach, which TCS offer and others offer, meant that we could actually accelerate the security of our infrastructure really quite quickly. Within 6 months, we'd stood our SOC up, which I think would normally take 2 years. On top of that as well, we've rolled out all of our governance frameworks, again, very important from talking about the risk management and our roadmap and all that. That was very much within that. We also did, coming back to that number one risk that we had around OT, around our manufacturing sites, we went into the sites and we risk assessed them to within an inch of their lives, to really get a good understanding of what that risk actually looked like. And so we ended up with a very detailed view, and that's now led to multi-million euro investment on those sites, effectively to safeguard them from cyber attacks, very much from a network perspective. And that is ongoing, but we're going to hit a major milestone this year where those sites will be, I'll describe it as a difficult target to cyber attackers. Doesn't mean that they won't be a target and there won't be an impact, but it would have to be a sophisticated attack to compromise them. We've also built out a load of technical controls, and some of these Vikas has already referenced. So, for example, multi-factor authentication, meaning that we're not just reliant on passwords for accesses, encryption of laptops, so that if we do lose laptops in airport lounges and things, they're actually pretty much useless from an attacker's perspective. And we've also done things like upgraded our antivirus, so we're into best in class. We've also done a lot on the people side, so masses of education of our workforce, e-learning, phishing testing, because this is where the most likely way that the attack will happen will be via a employee. So huge amounts of education. We've been testing that as well from a phishing perspective. So if any of our employees click on a link which has come from us, that will then go into remedial training. And we've been coming back to the data security. We've been doing a huge amount on the assessment of our data security vulnerabilities, and we're about to really build the control suite there as well. Next page, please. Okay, so just quickly now and I'm just going to very quickly go onto 2022, and it's very much more of the same really. Whilst accepting that things are changing as well. So again, this is where we're still subject to, we haven't contracted on this yet, but one of the big things we'll be looking to do is to expand the SOC responsibilities. So working with TCS again, recognizing that actually we want the SOC to have more powers compared to where they were. So at the moment, they're very much a detection mode, and we're looking to the next generation of security tooling known as EDR, so endpoint detection and response. That will give the SOC the powers to detect, but also to isolate, to investigate, and to remediate any of those attacks. That's very much from a ransomware perspective. We're also doing, and I kind of mentioned this already in terms of the data security, we're about to roll out a tool to enable us to have auto classification of our data. It's all about unstructured data, and this is the first step towards really controlling it, and will enable us to do things like DRP, which means that if data is sent externally, it'll get blocked so that it won't ever reach the internet. And then we're also doing a huge amount of work this year as well on access, and that's very much, again, when you hear the market talking about things like zero trust architecture, one of the major controls you have there is around access, and so we're just defining now a much more strategic approach to all of our access, including things like privilege access management. So the people who are the super users within Ipsen, we're going to have much more control of what they can and can't do. I'm not going to go through all the other lines. The things in bold are the things which we care about most, and again, this is just the continual prioritization of what we're doing. Next page, please. I think we're nearly there, actually. Great stuff, thank you. So just in terms of, and it's worth saying, I don't work for TCS. I'm not a TCS salesman, but I am a security professional, and I care about good security outcomes. And again, coming back to my personal experiences, and if they weren't good experiences, I would say so. I think what we've really got with the TCS partnership has been number one, it's been a partnership model. So I've got TCS colleagues, and I call them colleagues, who are part of my team. And I don't think of it being them being an Ipsen person or a TCS person. They're just part of the team, and I think that's been very much that works. At no point has there been a conversation about kind of SLAs or it's always about trying to both realise the security outcomes, and I say that genuinely. It really has been a partnership model. More than just a managed service where you think you've got like I say, you've got an SLA and you're continually fighting between the client and the provider. That is not the experience that we've had. I've also been very impressed with the expertise. So the people that we've had, maybe we've been lucky, but I found that we've been dealing with real subject matter experts. So a lot of the expertise we expect TCS to have, we will not have it ourselves in-house. We don't want it ourselves in-house. That's not how we should be operating. So we're very much reliant on the external expertise of TCS, which we get. But also this comes at scale. So we are able to draw on the broader TCS ecosystem if we need to, and generally, if we have a question, the answer comes back is that yes, we can do that, and that's something which we would not, as I say, we would definitely not be able to do in-house. And I've referenced this already, but the speed of deployment. So we've been able to go from 0 to 60, as we would say in the UK, quite quickly. So we've been able to really accelerate our transformation, and that's something which we would not be able to do in-house. And I think it's probably surprised us actually how fast we have moved, and that's very much thanks to to that partnership model. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not sure if we're doing questions, but I think it's time for me to stop talking anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, we unfortunately do not have time for questions, but I thank you very much, gentlemen, for connecting to us. And I also thank the gods of connectivity, because today everything works fine. And thank you very much, Tom, for having us, and the lovely crew in the back. I certainly got a lot more smarter in terms of cybersecurity, and hope you all will use this knowledge when you go back and look at how your cybersecurity is today. Thank you, Tom.
Great. Thanks, Akos. Thanks. Thank you, Vikas and Phil, very much. Very interesting. So we are going to go straight into the next session, which is back in the room number 1, and that is UiPath and process automation. That's for 45 minutes, and then we're going to break up again.
Cheers, gents.
Thank you.
For joining. My name is Oscar Rijtsma. I'm from Transparent Solutions. We are a P2P provider to many of the shared service centers. We had the opportunity to speak, but I think it's a bit boring. So I have the honor to introduce to you Camilla Gremowicz from Japan Tobacco. And she's going to take you to their journey into P2P.
Thank you, Pascal. Let's see if the technology works. Oh, yeah, good. So welcome, everyone. As Pascal said, my name is Camila. I'm Polish by origin, but moved 22 years now out of the country. And I've been doing GBS last over 15 years of my career. Currently, I work for Japanese Tobacco. As Pascal mentioned, I have a few team members here in the room. And actually, I'm speaking, but the guru of the whole thing is Alex here in the first row, my P2P lead. So, you know, they put me on the front because I'm blonde to make you a little bit entertained. Good. So a little bit about company, about JTI. Some of you may know Camels or Winston, some products we sell. We have around 40,000 people around the globe. We have a very international team all over the world, almost 400 different offices, factories. So a pretty different business, a bit spread all over, and unusual because we are very small in North America and super big in Eastern Europe, Russia, and Asia, so geographical structure is unusual to create GBS. In the company, as I said, we're very international, over 110 nationalities, and as I said, we have a pretty big dominance of Russian, Polish community, some other Eastern European ex-Soviet community, plus Philippines, Germany, Iran, where we have big factories. About our organization, I've joined our company around 2+ years ago, similar my colleagues here, when we officially announced we will create GBS. And we had some shared services before, and we decided to do cross-functional, change locations, move out completely from Manchester, move out from Kuala Lumpur, build a big center in Poland, build a new center in Manila. So a lot of things started happened. We had a beautiful plan when I joined. It was all prepared. We have these functions, all the nice figures. And guess what? 12 days into my job, Corona started, right? And we had to reprogram most of this, especially the build-up of 1.3 thousand people. We have managed by then having maybe first 200, and the rest happened during the pandemic. This is how the footprint looks now. That's the purple countries which we serve. And our 3 centers. Warsaw is our biggest center, currently around 700 people we employed here. So that's a kind of introduction. And what we have done in Procure to Pay. As I said, the COVID Corona was dominant influencer what we have done and how we have done. So last 2 years we have focused mostly on transitioning activities from all over the world into those 3 new centers, as well from previous centers as much as from multiple countries. This was not only AP, but master data, procurement. At the same time, procurement became the global function. So all the procurement people stopped reporting into country, but got global. We created category managers, and procurement had their own transformation there. As well, we have started vendor onboarding tools, some pilots, looking what we can do to be more digital, documented all the processes. I even don't know how many pages we have currently for P2P, but No, it's a lot of documentation, and we did really tens of transitions, moving and describing every process, documenting. And as well, at the same time, we were finishing our SAP for HANA rollout for few remaining countries, which were not done before. So pretty a lot was going on, and as I said, everything completely remotely. That's how we stepped into 2022. And we looked like, okay, how our flows look like, what we do actually, where we have a need. And we realized there's a few bigger needs, like in vendor master data, we definitely need a cleanup, we need more standardization, in the future as well, some automation. We looked on some PO creation processes. We definitely need to redesign the process, harmonize it across. We look as well on the invoice receipt. We didn't have any OCR, anything. We just scanned everything and typed into SAP. So that was a big need as well to do something about automate the process. In the payments and other things, we as well identify we need to have some tools, some audits, recovery, checking things, because it happened to us to pay double pretty significant amounts. So we relate all on the people. So what we have set up as a target for us in 22 is, okay, stop building the GBS, we're finalizing in transitions and start transforming. It's easy say, not easy to do, especially when your GBS is completely new kid in the block and practically we haven't met anybody in person almost, right? Alex had no opportunity to go to any country differently but by Teams being on the screen. So starting this transformation is piece of work, let's say that way. And on top, what all happens now with the war, etc., is not helping us at all because, as I said, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, those are huge markets for us. And still, we started standardization across all the markets. We decided for automation of accounts payable, including OCR, data, machine learning. We chosen as our solution for the springtime invoice track tool. And that's starting right now. We as well signed last year with Evalua for vendor onboarding functionality and vendor portal. That has been implemented in some countries. Now we do full rollout to the remaining countries starting this year. We as well look with, together with Transparent on AP recovery, duplicated payments, all of this, because that was value leakage for us. We need to do it as well. We have implemented GRER, Goods Receipt Reconciliation tool, right? And to as well moving to the proper KPIs, getting measured what we're actually doing, because we didn't have a much habit of measure things like paid on time, cost of invoice. Yes, we measure a few things in procurement, but not much. So all of this is happening at the same time. I don't want to bore you with the details, and maybe you have concrete questions on that to me or Alex. I don't know, maybe I will ask first question to you. Who of you actually is doing something similar or started any P2P standardization or anything? Few? Okay. So sounds familiar a little bit. And you know, it's always, we've been proud we have 80% PO penetration. It's nice, but it's not good enough anymore, right? What was good 10 years ago, now it's like, oh, come on, it's old. So a lot of those things we need to do. we put a lot of initiatives around our springtime implementation. We put, for example, translation tool. It's live already for first 6-7 countries, where we want to be less and less language dependent. I wish we did it maybe 2 years ago, that in case we have no access to some resources, we could have the translation done. But for invoice, the tool is trained, and we're getting better and better. So we want to be language agnostic. Of course, it's a dream, but it's moving. Cleanup of the data, changing some processes for fract. We have still, in some countries, a lot of handwritten invoices from the vendors. We need to work with those countries. It will take us probably a couple of years to eliminate those invoices. Tax automation, as I said, standardized documentation as well, a lot of this duplicated payments prevention, all that things happening as we speak, and we have a pretty busy hands. From organization is we work together with procurement function and with finance function. So, as I said, I didn't want to put 20 slides because we are it's before lunch, but maybe you have questions to us. I'm happy to answer. Sure.
How big is the impact on the automation that you are bringing, or the tools that you are bringing from the transformation?
Around 70 FTEs. It's we said we put it officially as a minimum commitment. It can be more if we do it right.
That's why you have those tables, everything that we are changing in the overall environment, right? So all the invoices that need to be improved, the quality, and everything that we need to improve to get this automation level to the expected outcomes. Yeah.
And 70 on how many?
Sorry?
70 on how many?
On 120, 130, half.
Yeah, we're expecting around 50% of productivity.
Around 50, yeah. I think you were. Yeah.
How did you use machine learning?
So that's a part of the springtime solution. They have their machine learning maybe you can explain better, Alex.
No, I mean we are starting, right?
Yeah.
But how it works is obviously it learns on the historical data. The most important thing is that we are going to load 18 months of historical data from our current system, so that the system, when we go live with the first markets, we already have a certain level of adoption and accuracy of the tool.
Yes,
Yes,
for the coding as well.
I mean, the idea is that we're going to have 100% of our supplier invoices processed through the system. That's a design principle that we have.
I saw that in the slide it was Evalua.
Yes.
It is used mainly, I believe, for boarding of suppliers.
Correct.
And portal only. Those two are functional.
So procurement didn't get involved with Evalua for.
It is procurement-led project.
So the PO is raised as well in Evalua and is communicated to the vendor through Evalua, and you are getting it, or?
Not yet. I mean, for Evalua, we are starting very slow, and it's just the onboarding and self-service, and then we are going to enrich the data for the Evalua tool. And
Yeah, POs in SAP. We don't do POs in Evalua. It's just purely to get vendor compliance, right? Sorry, przepraszam. I saw your hand, yeah.
So how percentage of suppliers have managed to get into that
onboarding.
Yeah. Because that's a real pain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's a completely different topic. We just started with a pilot with, I think, 3 markets, so it's only a few percent, but the expectation is to arrive at the level of around 50% when we go live with full scope. Obviously, it's going to take time. That's why we want to enrich the data from accounts payable. We want to make it a valuable tool for the vendors. But yes, it's always very challenging.
I hear that things, the world, as we know, changed. There's we appear to be fending off attempted frauds quite
Oh, yeah.
regularly.
Yeah.
And vendor portal is a key control
Yeah.
tool that we don't have, but it's just interesting
Yeah.
to see if you've had positive experiences, but it's quite early
I mean,
days.
for those markets which are live, okay, thank you. Those markets which are live is positive, but of course it's a marathon. It's not like sprint, you onboard everybody country by country, especially when you do 100% remotely, again, right? It's the teams from Warsaw onboard something, team from St. Petersburg onboarded Kazakhstan vendors because that was one of our pilots. So it takes time simply, yeah.
And that's, I don't know the tools, but I guess that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So the Evalua tool is a complete standalone from.
They all integrate into
they
SAP.
are integrated. Okay, they go through.
SAP is in the middle.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen somewhere, I don't know where.
Me? Okay. Now, on the picture with the technology that you are using, we're actually looking at similar names. I wanted to find out, how much Invoice Track is talking to Transparent, and is the need to have all of them, or what is the biggest benefit from you? I know that Transparent is not a workflow, so it's a,
Yeah, for us, first of all, it's using opportunity that anyway we need to mine all this data and transfer the data to different vendors because for machine learning, so we do it in one go. The same data goes to Transparent, the same goes to others, then they can build the solutions and we do one migration, one setup, right? So and one team as well. Because otherwise you would have to do another project and another team. So that's good that for us, it was do it in one go. Second, from Transparent is, what we recover, we share. So it's purely benefit. There's no investment practically, right? So it helps our business case because implement accounts payable itself only, it's not that cheap. So to get a better return on investment, getting AP recovery and other benefits at the same time helped a lot our business case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll continue benefiting from having the micro. So who is the driver for the transformation? Is more accounts payable or procurement? Because in our organization, we still work by the silo.
We managed to be a one. So Alex actually is GBS lead. And he has in his team procurement people and finance people combined, and IT, because in our company IT is everywhere involved. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Any? I mean, we are around, so you can ask. As I said. We just wanted to show what is it, and it's the year 3, and we're still not there. It will be probably 2024. Yes.
Just one more. You said that everything takes time, right? And especially in the remote environment. But the implementation of the workflow tool, is it? You can see that this is going fast, or? I know it's a cloud solution, I believe, right? And
we have planned 3 months on technical setup. Right? And then onboarding the countries in the waves. And we had multiple checks and reference calls. You can imagine the selection process took us a lot. So this has been proven by the vendor and the companies they work with as a best setup. Set up all the cloud infrastructure, all this configuration of global blueprint, whatever we call it, and then roll it out to the countries. So altogether, we have how many months?
I mean, we have 54 countries in scope, and it's going to take, there is a little bit of complexity on our internal process that we're going to do with IT, but by principle, the idea is that we're going to do it between 12 to 18 months in total for all.
But we've seen the the same solution being done faster if you have simpler setup.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe something just worth to mention, because we are also able to go quite fast, because obviously everything is centralized. But what you cannot see is that it's actually, I mean, JTI did go to a certain transformation path even before the GBS. So actually JTI already tried to implement a solution similar to Invoice Track. So it was like, I think around 10 years ago, something like this. It failed. Then it was a very big project around the standardization across different delivery centers. So we have quite a good foundation. I mean, we are maybe not using the best practices out of the market in our processes, but we are quite standard across the delivery centers. So that allows us to expedite a little bit the process of implementation. So you don't see it here, but there is a certain journey that has already been done for the process.
Good.
Any questions? Oh, thank you very much.
Back to you.
You are not introducing me.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Christian Bestre from Adaptive. I will concentrate the content of the session for the next 15 minutes or so. Basically looking as a summary or looking as a snapshot of hints from the perspective of a concern and management of the GBS organization in the times of concern. I have this. Yeah, is this for the? Okay. So first of all, what is your biggest concern today? Probably if I asked that question a month back, once we were agreeing the content with Tom, the answer would be different, and the answer would circulate somewhere around inflation and somewhere around rotation. Basically one with the other, with the element and with the, let's say, discussions that we had post-COVID or in the long-term COVID perspective, if we can call it. So actually once we started together with Anya, the lady in red, it's not red, but okay, to prepare those couple of snapshot slides, we had to revise everything what we agreed with Tom a month back. But we said, okay, then let's start from the 3 real cases. One of them we all experienced, or we are experiencing from 2 years. Second, we are experiencing from a month. And the third one, which is basically the most obvious one, and that's the one where the standard BCP lays, meaning unexpected flood or unexpected, let's say, warm-up effect disaster. And looking from those 3 angles to see what are the common learnings, to see what are the common tips, or what are the do's and also don'ts in that area. Actually in 3 areas: people, process, and technology. So the first one we all know quite well. Challenges related to pandemic, where the highest challenge actually over the time, initially it was to find the tools. Over the time it is more to find the capabilities to manage that kind of change of different approach almost everywhere. Where actually in short term, if you still remember that moment, but that moment was back and forth actually every 3 months, work from home model. Obviously now hybrid, and we had that morning discussion which one is now the most or least unique. Employee uncertainty. That also didn't change that much. That was not only the short term or immediate effect. This is something that went back and forth with the new waves or new types of COVID disease. Lower productivity. Some people say because of homework we have higher productivity because people are concentrating only on the tasks that they log in and they do it. And you don't have all this coffee time, you don't have also from the employee perspective all this travel time. So at the end of the day you are way more relaxed as an employee, and by that you are more productive. Is that really so? Do you have that kind of experiences? Probably. Many of us didn't do that, but probably for the companies who started once upon a time the measurements of the login time and check-in to the system time, that starts to work, because then the employees are only registering the time once they log in. But for the others, not necessary. Postponed transformations, I think you had all that, at least immediate decision of many of the corporations, if not majority, were to stop everything and look if we survive. And then IT infrastructure challenge, basically. The ones we were lucky at Adaptive, we implemented Teams, I think, 2 months before pandemic, with all the SharePoints and all the repository. But actually some companies were doing that only over the first weeks of the pandemic. And also, we all know the supply issues with laptops, with getting these machines to our homes. But what is then the long-term, well, effect, response, or long-term change actually that happened? Well, one is that we, meaning the industry, had to come up with some new approach for the working model. So some tested 3 days, 2 days, back to 2 days versus 3 days, 1 day versus 4 days, voluntary versus flexible, and the ones we discussed also today. Well-being, engagement, and online integration. So these were the things. Well-being was already there a bit, tried by some, but online integration not at all. So today in the morning I've asked you, hey, we had already 2 years of pandemic, but in the last 2 months, how many of you have organized any kind of online events for employees? Or hybrid? Even this pizza, with pizza delivered at home for this homework guys. Leadership, obviously, with lower productivity, with a new remote type of, very remote type of work, we started to look for, hey, we need new capabilities for our team leads, managers. They need to know how to manage those people around. So it's also new focus on, at GBS end, revised idea generation approach. Obviously, if you don't have people on the floor, the innovation is lower. At least for GBS. And I would not say for IT companies, they work at home forever already, and they don't claim the innovation is lower. So that might be the learning point also for us. And the final one, also hardware and communication tool investments. We all know this. This is also not the complete picture, but just as a setup for the conclusions. Probably one sum up point from the previous one is that for the short-term decisions we had like 1 month, because we knew it is coming from China, everything is locking down, Asia is locking down, so we had a couple of weeks to prepare. With that one, we had probably 1 week to prepare, at least short-term. We all see what is happening around, and basically I don't want to put now the perspective what happens if my center is destroyed by the military conflict, but rather the perspective being a leader in the GBS, having 5, 6, 7, 3 centers in the world, you can expect that every certain period of time it would happen around. Now we know it, and actually it's closer to us, so we know it by heart. So basically, obviously, the highest priority is on the business continuity and security of the backups, backup locations, and workforce management models, meaning that we can shift quickly, that we can actually make our BCP not linked to people availability, but rather linked to the location backup. If we are in Ukraine or if we are in Poland, if we are in Thailand for some time in the past or in South Africa for some time in the past, then there's always possibility that we need to consider and then we need to focus on is the evacuation of operations in general, whether from facility or with people or only with processes. But that is something you need to have in the BCP. Distraction from business focus, obviously if people are seeing all those refugees, if the management is busy with preparation of the action plans, communications, and also shock to what is happening, that gives a significant distraction from the focus on business. We might or might not have the workload drop, but certainly would have a disruption in that one. And obviously the one that is around the war, that many people talked about it already today, cyber risk and fake. We are not yet there, but how we can prepare long run, what long-term change it would bring. Well, basically, revision of BCP, I think this morning we were asking ourselves how many of us are practicing BCPs, and we were laughing that probably except for evacuation in the building and checking this IT connectivity of the backup locations, we don't do much. We had a practical example of COVID where we did a lot, and many companies refreshed that piece of documentation, the ones related to BCP, but the model needs to change, that we are not only able to migrate across locations, migrate very quickly, but that you have your strategies of engaging and ramping up new or backup sites already in the BCP, because everyone told us, well, wrote somewhere, or we actually came up with the idea how to move out better or worse, quicker, locally, with this delivery of laptops, with maybe now shifting of some operations. But we were maybe not necessarily told how to quickly ramp up, very quickly, 1 week. That brings me to the one of the, I think the third point there, new workforce management strategies, meaning, hey, so how we can ramp up quickly or how we can ramp down quickly in case this happens. Do we have, well, enough recruitment partners? Do they have enough capacity to support us? Or do we simply need to follow the BCP, meaning turn off the level 1 operations, meaning very transactional, focus with all the people that are retained only on, I don't know, on closing in terms of F&A? It is usually in your BCP what to not to take into account as low priority, but no one tried that much in practice. So actually what we try, as I said, is technology, shifting, in some cases, okay, traveling with people that we have to some backup locations, or asking colleagues from Manila to execute the job, or the other Manila, of course. But the fact that we don't have that one and standard model of execution of the operations will always make that almost impossible to start in a quick time frame if we don't have that workforce strategy. Mental health and CSR initiatives. Obviously, this is something that will be brought, and I think many of you have started to think already or to adjust already your thinking from the COVID. So new benefits we need after the COVID. This is hybrid, less hybrid, more engaging people to come back. But again, back to the, I think, WASI questions, what do they need as employees in these circumstances? What do they need as our partners in these circumstances? And at the end of the day, it is a lot about mental health, also physical health if this happens. But the companies, if the employees are our main assets, then if those assets are injured, or not, I don't find a better word now, then you as an employer need to take care of them as your employees. So this mental health is something like long-term that we would focus on, we would develop, and that this would stay with us from now on. So you may start to think about your strategy for this. And obviously new security measures actually on the cyber risk, that's one thing, and new communication functions. We as Adaptive also work a bit with JTI, and we must say that the communication function you guys have is brilliant one, meaning that you have dedicated resources, some of them purely to communication, some of them to change and making that high level buy-in in the organization. But actually with the first one, this is the asset that it's not about PR function, it's about really someone who can make it quickly and start to arrange this, and being also professional in what is communicated when. I'll come back to that. And finally, the one before the tips, which I called local, because it usually happens local, climate warm-up effect. Hurricane, flood, earthquake. Once I was setting actually getting the approval for the construction of the large building for the BPO company I worked for, my Hindu colleagues asked me, where is the independent source of power? Fine, I have it, but not necessarily the diesel generator. That was not good. Where is the source of water? And when the building is not too close to the gas station, and whether the building is not too close to something else, which might, in theory, be terrorist target. So those things are coming back, which in 10 years back, I look at them and say, hey, nice, but not necessary in Europe. We don't need that water separately there somewhere in the cellar. But yeah, now this will come back, because simply the huge wind can cause, as we could see in Poland even, can cause significant problems for your operations in one location for significant portion of time. Actually, 2 days before Russia started the war in Ukraine, I was in Warmia, Mazury Lake District, northeast of Poland, and it was Sunday, I think, 2 days before. And that the wind came, and suddenly the whole area, 2 million people, didn't have electricity for like 20 hours, from the evening to the next day evening. If that happened on Tuesday, meaning 2 days after, we would have a huge panic across Poland, and it would be, I think, for the whole country. It was not, but still, no one knew. No electricity, meaning no shops, meaning no gas stations, meaning nothing, no signal in your mobile phones. So complete blackout. If this was happening in Warsaw, because this happened only because of some of the pipe or whatever was with the power plants, then we will have a real panic, and then we could not even communicate. So short-term effect is that your employees or your infrastructure is impacted. So on top of that, I had the calls from my managers who had the tree on their roof and saying, what I am to do now? I cannot come to work because there is a tree on my roof. I'm waiting for some guys, but I don't know when they come. And then what? As an employer, I need the answer to that. Are you supposed to come to work or not come to work? Stay there, take a day off, or I'll give you a day off, whatever. But actually, the point is, employee uncertainty what to do. The point is that one manager will say, you stay home. The other one will say, you come, or we will send a taxi for you, don't worry, or whatever. The answers on the different operational floors would be different. And we, as an organization, need to really work that they are the same. And not necessarily that you would be able to put everything in the central steering kind of mode, but definitely this is one what is needed. Long-term challenge again. I believe, again, flexible workforce that you can ramp up, ramp down, and this is somehow in your DNA, that you don't necessarily need to have the full workforce on your own, and that you need to have a backup, somehow contracted, maybe outside, or kept in the backup locations, or tested frequently among your teams. But again, with the team of Manila, they would need to drop their own work to be able to absorb something from Warsaw. BCP redeployment. This, again, if I have the tree on my roof, what am I supposed to do? This is my private problem or my company problem? In the moment I'm in the working hours, this is actually both. But at least employees, we were talking about the BCP from the perspective of BCP officers, managers, and team leads. I think that was the lowest position we considered. But the employee, if hit by this or previous one, they need to know what to do. They would know what to do with the roof, but they would not know what to do. Shall I work? Shall I not work? What is now with my responsibilities? And obviously also cloud. I think there was a lot of discussion that this is one of the securest way to make sure your documents are safe. And finally, from triangle perspective, communication. That was too fast. Oh, it's one. Yeah, it's one now. Communication, leadership, and excellence. So first, communication. What is the common one? Don't stay silent. Any communication is better than no communication, especially if we talk about the center GBS management. Make sure you have multiple communication channels, because as you can see in many cases, we are talking about the shortage of electricity. And I'm not only talking about, okay, so what? No email, so what? No, you have to make sure that, as an example, you communicate on Teams, on emails, and on other sources of internal communication at the same time. Because then you simply increase the level of number of employees that can receive that information. Daily meetings with your mid-management, exactly to make sure that they are not giving the different answers to your employees. And once you communicate as the center manager, GBS manager, make sure you make it for all, because the worst thing can happen is that, death phone kind of deployment. So that the layer number 4 would deploy probably 1/3 what you meant. Plus, obviously, you are able to make certain commitments on behalf of all employees with the same wording for all. So this is understood the same way. Either that we have difficult times or that we commit that we don't. But it's still, or that we commit that we would support some stream. Emergency hotline, it is a bit old-fashioned, but this is exactly the fastest way that you can help individual employees with their physical problem, with their also mental problem. And regular CSR and society support actions. So like today, we all support Ukraine. The companies are taking the collections of gifts and goods and all what is needed. That is not necessarily the action for employee branding or any kind of PR, but this is definitely use your corporate, your corporate fans or people who follow you, just to make sure that they also know which account to support, or that there is a action of collecting something happening next Monday. Not mentioning obviously your own people, but also outside world. Leadership, well, basically the first comes also very, very obvious. There must be someone who is taking decisions, and this is not time for democracy. We can discuss the strategy in 3 months' time. Common approach, on the other hand, meaning exactly with this multiple daily huddles, sorry, you need to have one answer for the common questions. So it's even more, you should have always and every time this is happening, Q&A or frequently asked questions. Just put somewhere on your SharePoint or on a visible place and make it live. Meaning first you sit with your HR, with your management team, and first questions and answers you can actually write yourself, 15 of them. What will happen if, what company plans for, well, how they, and so on and so forth. The next one, you go to your town hall and you discuss with your people what are those. And then you open the mailbox or whatever source of communication that they can ask for more. And then you make it live with a change procedure that this is living document. It may change, the strategy may change, the answers might change over the time even. But then you have to make that visible for the people that the situation or the answers have been changed because of, I don't know, some external or new things we know. Obviously, review the transformations. We are working with a couple of big companies who completely stopped any kind of transformation initiative in the first months of COVID. And actually, they never relaunched that because they are still in COVID mode. So once we look at them now from 2 years perspective, they have lost that 2 years. There was a perfect moment to shift some people because even with unions or somewhere on the Western Europe, you could make that deals at that time. With some others, it was just in the middle of some implementation of systems. But they stop it, it's too expensive, we don't know whether we would survive. And then was what the GBS is really struggled with 2 systems, or one for half of operations, the other one for 1/3, and the third one for something, because simply that time was lost. I'm not saying that you need to spend on all of them, but never cancel immediately everything. Mental support policy budget, yeah, this is like a new benefit or new element that you need to take into account for the future. Policy understood even indeed like a policy. Who is eligible, why, how, and what can be offered by the company and who is contracted for what. Especially that, in my view, sustainability and this might be or should be considered as very much the strength of the GBS, long-term strength. The fact that you can shift, you have enough scale to backup, you have enough tested tooling to make it fast. The last case, by the way, of the regional warm-up effect type will give you only 24 hours to really act instead of 1 month or 1 week of preparations. And finally, the last one, operational excellence. As I said, workforce management understood as, well, contracted partners, contracted sources, tools to measure efficiency. And of course, this is tricky one of this, again, time spent type of tools. But indeed, you need to find out your way to match that efficiency measures with the unavailability of your people or work from home model. Key resources with a relevant technology. Yeah, that's nice that there is a officer on the floor with BCP, but that officer do not have the ability to send a group email to everyone. Or that officer is not equipped with company mobile phone, even. So how the hell that person can take the leading role in coordinating something in the moment and that the BCP happens, or BCP need happens. Standardization. Again, if we look at our clients, for the ones that are at least on the one system, HANA type, this makes one template of doing the things quite easy to to implement, maybe except for accounting, where everything is the most complex and you have to have that local specifics. But for HR, for supply chain, for procurement, this one template simply allows on every single transaction to, with limited training, to exchange it between employees or between centers. With the data on cloud, actually you did whatever you could do as a preparation work. And also with automations of not necessarily only transactions, but also all these reports and analysis of rule-based things. The more you do it, the more it's just a matter of where the servers are, or if there is everything on cloud, because the more you do here, the less pain you would have. The machines cannot be hurt. They can be, the robots can be sick, of course, but that brings automation, brings us much easier to manage. Any other thoughts or any other questions, ideas from your side?
I would say the one which I was thinking when you were talking is like how to do this, flexible workforce. Because I was thinking, so we hire 20 people who will sit there and waiting for disaster to happen, or 100 people, or 200, right? Because with the size of the centers, some of us has like 500-700 people, how you can move it. And even in other location, if you have nobody on standby, you need to hire. Hire, it's at least 3 months. Ramp up, ramp down. So what is quick, right? Quick, is it 3 months? Is it 5 months is quick here? And as well, you said, okay, maybe you can use vendor, but guess what? All the vendor, if the disaster happens in this country, the vendor gets requests from maybe 100 to 200 companies. So they don't have 2,000-3,000 people waiting on standby either, right? So how you envision, do you have any example of this really, what means fast and how you can do this flexible workforce?
Yes, I do. Basically, fast is one thing, but actually thinking from the global perspective, if you are GBS leader of a couple of GBS locations, then obviously not everyone is located in Warsaw or in Poland or in Ukraine. So that is not full, let's say, not a global problem, but really regional one. But how to have that organized? Well, one thing is obviously that you, let's say, decide on your own mix of temporary versus fixed employees, which is risky from the attrition perspective and which is more difficult to manage because you have to prolong this and then from legal it starts to be also challenging. The other one is to go with the BPO, meaning you outsource parts and this is a bit not your problem how the provider is managing their workforce, meaning you have contractually something committed. Obviously it doesn't solve your problem in terms of problems because that will happen also to the provider and it's even longer decision tree. So the answer is in between. You need to have many and you need to have different one in different locations so that you don't necessarily need to take people from Poland to Krakow disaster. You can take people from Panama to Krakow disaster. And I'm not talking about your own GBS location, but I'm talking about the chain of partners or suppliers. Typical example, you ask me, I had this type of the service at Adaptive, which we call Rescue Rangers, and there are many examples that people are asking us for sudden replacement of the COVID patient or of the controller that suddenly moved out. Okay, it's a different scale, it's a small scale, but once we agree that in the BCP momentum, we all are changing the perspective on the scale, so turning off these non-critical things. Any other questions, views? Good. Then I have the view. that the lunch is ready.
No, yeah, let's say everyone, thank you very much for your presentation. And I go out.